Motivation. What is it and where does it come from? You can describe motivation as the inner drive that propels you to do anything. For instance, I'm motivated right now to talk to you for the next 5 to 7 to 9 to 10 minutes to give you a little bit of insight on what motivation is and how it can help you, where it comes from, and what you should look out for if someone else gives you motivation. That leads me to the first kind of point of discussion here. It may be possible to give someone motivation, then again it may not be. A lot of sports psychologists sort of suggest that motivation is something that comes from within. No, someone may not necessarily be able to give it to you, however, they can kind of take it away from you. I'll give you a clear example. In my first couple of years of coaching women, I think I took a lot of motivation away from the athletes because it was my first time ever coaching women. And when you're coaching boys and men for, let's say, 6 or 7 years, and then you transition into coaching women, there is a completely different strategy that you have to use, or a tactic, or a listening, and or communication, and or there's a bunch of different things that have to change. It's almost like teaching someone softball and then teaching them baseball, and you're like, oh well, those are similar. If you ever watched softball versus baseball, they're similar but they're very different. So there's not to say one is better than the other, it's just a little bit different. So getting back to the point of motivation, I had to learn how to coach women eventually, and because I was motivated to learn, I thought I did a relatively good job. Getting back to motivation again with another clear example of how you can do it and where it comes from and what you can do to enhance it. And I'll start off with goals. I gave a discussion or talk several videos ago that talked about goals and what you should do and how you can attain them. The clear example of why you would set goals is because you're motivated to do it. If you're not motivated to set goals, you'll never even start, and it'll never be something that you'll get into. Now, if you want to learn how to do goals really well, if you're motivated, if there's something driving you from within, if you feel good about doing it, man, you'll get after it. If, on the other hand, there's not a burning desire to get to the next level of whatever the heck you're doing, you won't go in the direction of trying to plan and decide and choose and get on a path of success in that area. And that's something that you need to kind of think about. Let it sink into your brain and see if you believe in that. Here's another example. My mom wants me to be a state champion. My mom wants me to be an Olympic champion. My mom wants me to do this, that, or the other. You can fill in the blank for this, that, and the other. If your mom wants you to do that, for instance, or your dad wants you to do that, for instance, maybe you've heard of this term, soccer mom, but it could also be called a wrestler's mom, or it could also be called a father's coach, or it could also be called, you can throw in the description there. The point being, if the motivation is coming from outside, not coming from the individual athlete, then it may be a false motivation. And I've coached athletes there where they're, I've questioned them. After you've coached for several years, you start to see all kind of signs if the athlete really wants it or if it's coming from somewhere else. Of course, my job is to elicit, to find out, to ascertain, to, get them, hey, these are the things you can do to become a champion. If, for instance, if I find out, after questioning and answering and listening and, developing a relationship with the athlete, if I find out that it appears that their motivation is not coming from them, it's coming from someone else, then I have to start to, kind of lead them in that direction. And finally, we get to the point where, well, why are you doing this? And that's probably a good question to ask yourself anytime you're doing anything. You can usually, if you're being honest with yourself, you can usually find out if you're motivated by just asking, why am I doing this? After several meetings with athletes, in the last 7 or 8 years that I've been coaching women, they start to decide that, I hadn't ever thought of that before. No one's ever asked me that before. And then you start to find out I am doing this sport because of my mom or dad, or I am doing this because I'm on scholarship, or I am doing it because of all of these other factors, except for I have a burning desire to be the best wrestler ever. I have a burning desire to learn and master skills to execute them in competition. There's something inside of me that's driving me to get on the top rung of the podium. If you don't hear that type of language or that type of description, a lot of times it is coming from somewhere else, and I think that's where you need to really be aware of. Another example was when I was in Mexico last summer, actually. Yeah, I was in Mexico last summer at the Cadet Pan Am. Cadet is 15 to 17-year-old Cadet Pan American Championships, and we had a similar scenario like that. And we did all kind of stuff. It was a great trip, actually. I mean, we ended up, I think, taking second to Mexico. I think we had 7 or 8 wrestlers placed in the top 4. I think we had one champion and 3 or 4 other medalists. Doesn't matter. Here's the point. I was talking to one of the athletes and I asked her, of course this was after maybe several days. I asked her, well, why are you doing this? And, several days later she came back to me and she's just like, you know what, when you asked me that, I didn't have a real clear-cut answer for you because I didn't know. My dad has been in the sport with me for so long, and then it dawned on me, maybe I don't even like this. And then she gave me an example of, she basically took about 1.5 years off prior to that, me asking her that question, before those championships, and then she had to think about it again. So it's just another example sometimes of athletes may actually be doing things because their parents want them to do that, which is fine. But in the end, if you're trying to be the very best at the top level, and you could just change the participation, make it a different sport, make it a different job. Some kids go to college and their parents want them to be doctors and lawyers and all of these other things. I think the student athlete or the student or the child needs to decide what they want to do. And if that motivation is coming from within, then yeah, now you need to set some plans, create an action plan, and then get the most, the best or the most or inclined person to help you in the direction of your path. An example of, if I've got sports psychology problems, maybe I need to see a sports psychologist. If I'm trying to become an Olympic champion, if I'm studying math and I don't understand math and I'm motivated to do well in math, maybe I need to go get a math tutor because they're the best person that can help me with that specific academic discipline. So I'm giving you examples of, if you're motivated to do things and you're motivated for change, you need to get to the people that can help you do those things. So I've kind of given you a little bit of a description of what motivation is in terms of where it comes from, and then what you can do to enhance it. What can you do to enhance your motivation? If I want to become an Olympic champion, if I want to become a rocket scientist, if I want to become a doctor or a lawyer, I need to set up specific guidelines and action plans and goals for me to get there that will enhance my motivation. Then I need to look at this stuff every single day and remind myself, why am I doing it? And again, that goes back to something I said earlier. Why are you doing what you're doing? If you can answer that succinctly or in 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 sentences, a lot of sports psychologists and psychiatrists and motivational people talk about, man, if you can come up and justify why you're doing things, and if you can create paragraphs and volumes of why you're doing it, you probably really want to do it. On the flip side, if you can't come up with any reason why you're doing the goal that you're doing, you probably are not sufficiently motivated to do it. So I hope that gives you a little bit of description of motivation and how you can enhance it and what it is. And again, if you're in a sport, if you're in something because your parent or somebody else wants you to do it, you need to ask yourself, am I doing this because they want me to do it? Am I sufficiently motivated to achieve greatness? And I think we should all be motivated to achieve greatness in something. You need to probably find out what that is. For me, I love coaching, I love teaching, I love trying to become the best that I can be. And how do I do that? I've got to learn. So I'm motivated to learn to reach my ultimate goal of becoming a very successful husband, father, coach, etc. I'm motivated to do all those things, so I go out of my way to get what I need. Motivation. Remember, you can find out more information like this at youtube.com. Coach Shannon. Coach Shannon Talks.